Jesus said we're to go into all the world and preach the gospel. But what if the place we go to is hostile toward the gospel? What if the place is our work environment? What if it's our community? What do we do when the place we want to share the gospel is volatile and hostile to that gospel?
Let's see what the Bible says about that. Hey, welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad that you clicked on this. If you would, go ahead and like and subscribe to our channel, and you can comment if you have any questions or thoughts. We'd love to hear what you have to say.
All right, so today we're excited to have Wayne Hamilton joining us on our podcast, and most of you probably don't know who Wayne is. I do. Truett's just learning who Wayne is, but I grew up with Wayne as friend and mentor here in Ovilla back in the day. So we're going to hear from Wayne today on this subject of earning the right to share your faith, and you'll see why he's a great candidate for this conversation today. So, Wayne, introduce yourself. Tell us about what you do, where you live, and your wife.
Well, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed before the podcast here getting to chat about old times.
Yeah,
and that's fun. I actually live over in Hill County on a ranch over there, and my wife is Kara, and she has a business and she's gourmet food business, and been doing that about 10 years. And
It's okay to tell what that is.
It's Leaning Our Salsa, and if you're anywhere around a central market or a market street, go in and buy some, and buy a lot, please.
It's good. So, but you also spend a lot of time in Austin.
Yes, I do. I have a place in Austin. I have an office in Austin. I work in Austin, and I do political consulting. I do lobby work. I do a lot of government affairs work, and my background is campaign work, political work.
Wow,
nice.
So you're in and around the Capitol a lot.
A whole lot.
Yep. So, but you grew up here in Ovilla, and this is a different place. Ovilla is not Austin.
Ovilla is not Austin.
Yeah.
That is the understatement. And I'm grateful for it.
Yeah. So how do you get from Ovilla to Austin? How does that happen?
And in what time frame are you living in Ovilla?
Yeah.
I lived in Ovilla up until like 96, maybe, that area in there. And that's when I moved down to Austin at the time to work for State Representative Jim Pitts. And but I guess my original, as you know, Brian, Brian and I did just kind of local, not really politics. We informed people about where the political figures stood on things, and we through Ovilla Road Baptist Church, we had a little. It's not even a scorecard. It's just kind of a magazine, a tabloid. Anyway, we just let the local candidates kind of put a blurb about what they believed, and kind of directed the subjects that people that the church would be interested in, and got people to comment on them. And from there, Ron Brown.
There you go.
Yeah, I went to work for Ellis County Commissioner Precinct 4, Ron Brown, who's still one of my closest friends. And from there, Congressman Joe Barton. And anyway.
Yeah, all the way to where you are today.
Yeah.
So I want everybody to have a frame of reference for why you're here today. And I know the last thing you want to do is boast about what you do necessarily and who you get to run with, but to just have everybody have perspective. Would you mind name dropping a little, just so that we could know who is it that you're working with, who you walking beside?
Well, give you a quick bio, and you're right. I don't like talking about myself because I don't even like. You do a search on me, a Google search, and I've done everything I can over the years to stay out of the media, stay out of the spotlight. The last few years, I've had to be a little bit more active because of a thing I'm doing called Project Red Text down in South Texas. But after I worked for Congressman Barton. I went to State Representative Jim Pitts. From there, my things kind of took a pretty, I'm not saying different turn, but a little bit more aggressive turn in politics. I left Jim Pitts. I went to the Republican Party of Texas as the executive director under Susan Weddington.
Yeah.
And Susan, great lady and incredible. She passed a couple of years ago, but she is she was unbelievable. A great lady of faith, great prayer warrior, great leader, and she was just what the party needed at the time. Yeah. I spent 6 years, 4 months, and 6 days as executive director of the Republican Party of Texas, the longest serving in the history of the party to date.
Wow.
Well, I don't know what that says about me, but that's a tough job.
Yeah.
And from there, I went into, I joined a political consulting firm, went into lobbying, and from there, I did some work for Governor Perry. Was Governor Perry's national political director on his first presidential run. Still do work for Senator Kelly Hancock. I produced all of Governor Perry's inaugurations. Me and a lady named Leah Zaccanino produced 7 state conventions. After that, I ran Governor Abbott's 2014 campaign, and then and produced his first inauguration, and then from there went back into the lobby, and in 2018 started Project Red Tex, and I do a whole lot, and do a whole lot of special projects, but Project Red Tex and lobbying's pretty much what I'm working on this election cycle.
Wow.
So
it's awesome.
But the work you're doing now, I'm sure puts you in places where you're relating to people on both sides of the aisle, not just always Republicans. Yeah. So, that's an interesting journey, because this means you're sometimes relating to people and working with people who maybe stand in opposition to your faith and even some of your values. So how do you get to a place where you build a framework for how that happens, where I need to be able to relate to them to accomplish the task? I've got to be able to be heard and to hear. How do you get to that place in your faith, be able to work with people on both sides of the aisle?
Well, that's it can be difficult sometimes. I'm a little bit unique in the fact that very few lobbyists, probably you could count them on one hand out of the hundreds of lobbyists in Austin, do political work. I mean, just cold, hard political work like I do. The reason why is because you don't, as a Republican, the Democrat, you at one hand are kind of beating on the Democrats in election season, and then it's kind of difficult to come back into their office when you're a lobbyist and say, "Hey, let's be friends now." Same way on the Democrat side,
right?
But I'm very tailored in what I do. Right now my Project Red Tex is focused in South Texas and the border areas, and it's focused from the county judge on down. So I don't do a lot of campaigning in the legislative areas. There are a few that I do work for. I'd mentioned Senator Kelly Hancock, who I just think the world of. Senator Brian Birdwell. I've worked with Senator Birdwell a long, long time. I'll do anything that I can to help him. Senator Tan Parker. And then a whole slew, Angela Orr, who's my state representative over in Hill County, and a whole slew of others. But then there's those that, and most of those people, we have very similar outlooks on the world, very conservative in our political beliefs, but then there's others that we have very, very, very little in common. But there's been times that I've needed to work with those people, and again, I don't work that much in the legislative area on campaigns, except for some incumbent Republicans. But I'm able to walk in and try to find an area where we agree, and we start from there. There's one in particular that is kind of an AOC type, very not out and out socialist, but very government intervention minded.
Right.
She, kind of a tax and spender. We need to take from the rich and give to the poor.
Right.
And very, I'm not saying anti-Christian, but anti-traditional Christianity.
Okay.
And anyway, but we agree on some housing issues and some development type issues, and we forged a good working relationship on those because, she needs help from the Republican side getting these type of issues through. And housing is a big issue right now, guys. I mean, anybody that's bought a house in the past 2 years knows
right.
you're paying a fortune for it, and the inventory is just not there.
Yeah.
So it's a big deal. But we've forged a working relationship, and her first session, she wouldn't even smile. She was kind of angry at the world. Now she's much different, and and she, but she's I enjoy her. I enjoy talking to her. Went to a fundraiser and have all these lobbyists standing around, and there's a bunch of Republican lobbyists, and they're kind of, how do you relate to this person? And everybody, she shakes their hand, and they, here's a check, and they talk a second. They do 2 or 3, and she shakes their hand. It gets to me, and she hugs me.
Wow.
And I kind of, everybody kind of looks over at me. Because it's like this partisan, conservative Republican, and her, and it's like, what are they? Well, the reason why is because, I'm frank with her. I tell her I can't do that, or I can do this, or and I appreciate her. Now, that's the only thing so far I found out that we're on the same side on. But look, it's one thing, and we've used that to establish a relationship.
Yeah. Wow,
and
that's
that
good.
we both of us love Oak Cliff too.
Yeah.
So,
Nice.
There's
nice.
2 things there.
There you go.
So
you find that in being straight up honest and real about your faith, and not being like this sly, sneaky, let me kind of passively be Christian, you say being just honest about your convictions maybe serves better, not being hostile about them, but
well, that's funny because of who I am, because of my 25 years now, 25 plus years, 30 years. Oh, it's a long time in Austin. I kind of have established who I am. I couldn't, if I wanted to, I couldn't run from my Christian faith.
Right.
I'm who I am.
Yeah.
People know me as a believer. People know me as a follower of Jesus, and those are my values. Those are the principles I stand on. And at the end of the day, I walk into a room, you may not know me at first, but if you start asking around about me, everybody's going to say the same thing about me. And so when you get Wayne Hamilton, you get the gospel. And that's kind of the way it is.
Yeah. I experienced that recently. We were in Austin. Wayne was walking us around the Capitol, and it didn't matter who we met. They all responded to Wayne in the same way. And I thought, okay, Wayne's consistent wherever he goes, and everyone knows him in the same way, whatever side of the aisle they were on. So I'm curious, because a lot of Christians today, as we sit, not able to walk the halls of Austin, develop relationships, we see what we see in the news or media, and a lot of Christians become very skeptical, and they're looking to, like, how in the world can anyone even be in that environment and be used by God? And they're looking to run from it and stay out of it. We don't even want to know about it anymore. But the Scripture's full of people who were involved in government and political associations and offices. Moses, Daniel, Joseph, Isaiah, David, Esther, they all at one point or another had some interaction with the governing rulers. And God use them and God bless them. Is there something you have learned from their lives that have helped you to get where you are today and to manage and be able to work and relate and be used by God?
Oh, wow. There's a lot in that question.
Yeah. Sorry. It's long.
Well, when you look at, first of all, I look at Joshua. What was the admonition to Joshua all the time? Be strong and courageous, be strong and courageous, be strong and courageous. And, I saw that in Joshua back, I guess when I first got into the political world, is that, he was the political leader. He was in that group. And God's message to him was be strong and courageous. It didn't say be a jerk. It just said be strong and courageous.
Nice.
And so, that is, I've always tried to be strong and courageous without being a jerk. I hadn't always won that inner fight, but because you talk to people say, I'm not trying to be a jerk. It's because I don't have to try. And then I think that the key, and this is not just politics, this is business, because I view myself as a businessman whose business is in the political world.
Yeah.
And the people around me, I think, would probably agree with that.
Yeah.
But I look at being direct, being telling the truth, and people will recognize this admonition: tell the truth, or at least don't lie. And it's that's extremely important, because being forthright and telling the truth, even in uncomfortable situations, is so needed. I look at the life of King David, and who, wow, I mean, you look at all that he did, and his victories and his not defeats, but his shortcomings. Yeah. And his shortcomings, while his victories were great, and he was a man after God's own heart, and we see the victory after victory after victory on the battlefield, but we also see that he refused to deal with uncomfortable situations, and it caused him. I mean, that was King David's problem, whether it was his family or within himself. He refused to deal with difficult situations. Wow. And I look at those difficult situations, and whether it's interpersonally, and know that telling the truth, or at least not telling a lie, puts you in awkward situations a lot, and a lot of difficult situations. But it's better to do that and deal with it and get it out in the open, and where you can deal with it, and that way you don't have to worry about, well, I didn't address that problem. It just kind of festers, because that's we all know that if you don't address it, it's going to fester. Right. Yeah. And so you just from the start, you lay it out there, and I'm not saying let the chips fall where they may, but it's something that has to be dealt with. And yes, it's uncomfortable for people, and a lot of times, but it's better to get it out there.
And I'm sure you found then that people respect you more when you do, rather than if you choose to hide or be insincere or covert.
Insincerity, people pick up on that really, really quick. Yeah. And there's just absolutely no way to hide insincerity.
Yeah. Right.
And people are going to pick up on it. Yeah. You lay things out there and address them. And what I have found is that people trust you more. Yeah. And I will have legislators that know me very well will look at me and say, hey, I know you're working for this company, but tell me the issue here, or what's going on, or how do you think I should handle it? there are times when I say, look, here's my client's position on this. Mm-hmm. This is what it is. The question you're asking me is, how's it going to impact you? And one of the things I always tell them is, just because a client, my client or somebody even in your district thinks thus and such, you have to go home and look yourself in the mirror. What's your conviction? Yeah. You've got to vote what is you're okay with.
Yeah.
And if you can't vote for it, whether it's against my client or against somebody in the district, you're just going to have to vote against it.
Yeah.
And because, again, you have to deal with God. I don't on what you do.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
True. So,
that's true.
Often the church has this idea that sharing your faith means you just walk up to people and you just start kind of cold call sharing your faith. Mm-hmm. You're a passionate guy. You live by your convictions, not afraid to speak. But from what I've heard from you and observed, you have found that there is more power in not just the cold call in your face, but in the intentional, I'm going to develop a relationship. I'm going to earn the right, even earn the relational right to share your faith. Did you say that's been true, your approach?
Oh, yeah, there's no question about that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, we see that throughout the Scripture. We see it in the New Testament for sure. It's kind of how Jesus even comes to earth. That's his purpose behind that.
Billy Graham, he used to have the big stadium rallies and things like that. Mm-hmm. And that was evangelism at that time. That's what it was. And it worked. It's what God had for him and everything. I'm not saying that time has passed, but from my observation, that's no longer a vehicle that's being used of God right now.
Right.
We have seen, because of all the things that have happened within the realm of Christianity over the past 2 decades, 3 decades, there's been a real erosion in people's confidence in Christianity.
Oh yeah.
And I think a lot of it has to do with people. They look at men and the whole PTL scandal is kind of what started the unraveling of what I say is modern day tele-Christianity.
Yeah, exactly.
When people they kind of worship a man or a ministry, and then when the ministry comes undone, what's wrong with what's wrong with Christianity as a whole?
Yeah.
And of course, you knowing me as long as you have, know how irreverent I've always been about that type of those type of ministries, and still am to this day. It's they're going to fall.
Yeah.
And the reason they're going to fall is because men are involved. And, being somebody who believes in the doctrines of grace, total depravity is a real thing.
Yeah. Sure. Yep. So, like you're saying, then public trust in the church is eroded at that point. Mm-hmm. So you can't just relate to people as though that trust is there.
Yeah.
You have to relate knowing I have to gain this person's trust before they'll ever want to hear me.
It's relational ministry.
Yeah.
And have it to where they trust you. And you've seen it. You've met some of the young professionals around me. My life is about developing young professionals. Mm-hmm. And I spend, yes, I do government affairs work. Yes, I do political work. Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm around elected officials all the time. But what I get up in the morning wanting to do is to develop young professionals, spend time with them. Virtually all of them come from broken homes. It's interesting. I'm always careful when I say this. I spend a whole lot of time with girls. And, 20 years ago, it's, you can't spend time with girls.
Right.
Of course, in today's age, it's like, you're spending time with guys,
Right.
But I spend a whole lot of time with girls. And I have a lot of guys that I invest into, and obviously they're totally different types of relationships. But I see girls that whose dads aren't in the picture a whole lot,
Right.
and not all of them, but a lot of them, and how and all I can think of is how important it is for dads to be dads.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
and to spend time with their daughters, and I can really look at these. I can look at these young professionals and just go, that girl, her dad has been very active in her life and everything because of their level of confidence, their level of leadership and everything.
Yep.
But dads are important, and I see that. But I spend a lot of time developing those young professionals, investing in their life. And it's funny, usually a crisis will come, and the first thing they'll do is, hey, would you pray for me?
Wow.
Yeah, I will. Guess what? Let's and we talk a little bit more, and that opens the door for ministry. And
that's powerful.
So,
That's awesome.
Yeah, when they over time have developed trust in you, seen you consistently live out your faith, be genuine, sincere, then they're willing to listen. In fact, they come asking.
right.
Yeah.
You don't have to go beat the door down. They actually come to you.
Yeah.
The consistency part, I think, is very, very important. I try to be the same everywhere, all the time, no matter what's going on.
Yeah.
Again, the young professionals around me get a little bit freaked out when I start getting quiet, because when I start getting quiet, that means that, the things are falling apart, because the more things fall apart in whatever it is that we're doing, the calmer and quieter I become.
Wow.
Trying to project stability. So when I start getting quiet, they start freaking out.
That's hilarious.
I mean, this is kind of ministry that Jesus did. I mean, the Bible says he came and took on flesh and blood like us, tabernacled among us, lived among us, and this is where we develop love for him because of how he loved us. This is how Jesus entered a city when he ministered. This is how he sent the disciples to go into a city to find a house, stay in that house, share your faith, and if the people don't respond, shake the dust off and move on.
Yeah.
So it's really just putting into practice what Jesus did and how he ministered as well.
Exactly.
So,
and there are, two verses from the New Testament that I think clearly illustrate these points of sharing your faith with wisdom and discernment. This first one's from Colossians 4:5-6. It says, walk in wisdom toward those who are outside, redeeming the time. Let your speech always be with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer each one. So again, very specific, tender, compassionate, with wisdom and with discernment. And then this passage from 1 Peter 3:15 says, but sanctify the Lord God in your hearts, and always be ready to give a defense to everyone who asks you a reason for the hope that is in you, with meekness and fear. Yeah. And so to me, that's what it sounds like you have been putting to practice in your business, you could say, and with earning that relational right with sincerity and with compassion. And so anything else from those two verses that stick out?
Well, everything about, a relationship, I'm real careful about how people perceive me, and especially when it comes to Christianity, because Christianity, I'm kind of at the point to where when people use the word Christianity, you want to go define your term. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Because
exactly.
Because are you talking about the as in the Middle East? You say they use Christian as kind of an ethnic term. Are you talking about there's this term the left has come up with called Christian nationalist.
Yeah.
Which everybody knows is they're trying to relate it with what do they call them? White nationalist, and it's a racial association,
right?
And I have no idea what that means. The term means. I mean, they just make up terms, and people say, well, it means that you believe that America is a Christian nation. Well, what do you even mean by that?
Yeah, exactly.
Are you trying to tell me, George Washington did not, hold to the tenets of Christianity?
Right.
Well, he sure claimed to.
Yeah. Exactly.
And you look at all of our founding fathers, and I mean, there's a few exceptions. Most of them did.
Yeah.
And so when people start talking about Christianity, I always want them to define the term. I like Larry the Cable Guy. I heard him. His dad was a Baptist pastor, and so I was listening to him talk to Danica Patrick one day, and he said, he asked about his faith, and he said, I view it like this. He says, I'm a follower of Jesus, and
that's it.
Whatever term that you want to add to that is your business, but that's where I am. And hey, who am I to argue with Larry the Cable Guy?
Yeah. A couple of years back, we talked some, and I remember you saying that. Now, I was kind of confused at first as what you mean. Like, I don't want to be labeled as a Christian or Baptist or any of those kind of terms, or even conservative, or name the political figure, follower. I just want to be known as a Jesus follower. So, I mean, hearing all this, it makes more sense, especially in the realm in which you walk.
Yeah,
where there are so many different definitions and titles out there.
And Dr. Mike McDowell of the Alamo College System, who's written a book on world religions.
Yes.
Him and I have had those discussions quite often, and he's the same way. He says, I just describe myself as a follower of Jesus.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's the best in this day. So I've known Wayne for a long time. So back in the 80s, I knew Wayne, and Wayne's always been direct and bold and not afraid to create an awkward moment. But back then, he had even less of a filter for that. So Wayne would say things in certain settings, and I would cringe and just watch what was going to happen next. And people would get upset, and wild things happened as a result. So again, I remember funny stories, even in church, where Wayne was not afraid to create the awkward moment, make a point. So we're sitting in Ovilla Road Baptist Church back in the day with pews, nice building. It's the day of hymns and order of service and people in suits and women in dresses and your hair done up well and everyone's looking formal. And Wayne comes in blue jeans and no shoes and props his feet up on the back of the pew, and everyone is just like, oh, I can't believe he's doing this, that kind of thing. So that's not who Wayne is today. How do you go from being that guy then to this guy now? How all of a sudden do you have this relational sensitivity, this sense of I need to earn the relational right to be able to share my faith. I want to look for what's common ground. I want to be genuine. I want to care for people. I'm willing to play the long game. That's different Wayne than I knew back in the 80s. How do we get from that Wayne to this Wayne?
Well, let me first say, back then, I didn't care what people thought about me.
Okay.
And I still don't.
Okay. All right.
There is, obviously there's difference. You age, you learn things. I actually probably care less what people think about me now than I did back then. And the difference is, I'm very busy and I don't have time for a lot of, people having to deal with drama. I don't deal with drama, by the way. It's just like, you're gone. And so
that part's still the same.
Yeah. And so if I would, back in the 80s, I would say something and then, everything explode and fine. Everybody has a right to say what they want to, and people to get mad. And I'd kind of think it was funny. Yeah. But all that took energy and time. Most of the time, like I say, I just really don't care what you think of me, and I really don't, in most cases, don't care your opinion. But so when people, rather than say something I know is going to get a reaction, that's going to cost me a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of drama and everything, it's just like, I don't care what you think. And it's just, great. You got your opinion. Who cares what you think?
Right.
And it's not to be mean. It's just I don't have time, and this is going to sound really bad, but you're not significant enough in my plan and what I'm trying to do in order for me to engage with you.
Right.
If I engage with someone on something like that because I've been direct, it's somebody I've got an investment in, somebody I care about, say something about, say something. I say something in order to make them stop and think about whatever it is that the subject is.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, I'm known for directness now. I don't blink at it, and interestingly enough, professionally, I've learned to monetize that. And everybody kind of goes, "What?" And but people pay me obscene amounts of money to deal with uncomfortable situations, and deliver bad news, and it's like the truth's going to come out sometime, guys.
Yeah.
Now's probably the best time. Yeah. Oh yes, if you want to pay me to do it, I'll take care of the situation right now. And people go, sure.
Yeah.
And it's
But you're not just walking the halls of Austin just saying, "Hey, you're a this and you're a that, and get out of my way. I don't have time for you." That's not you.
No, that's not me. No, look, one of the things Jim Pitts taught me, he taught me a lot, but one of the things he taught me when I worked for him was the art of being charming.
Okay.
And
wow,
there you go.
And
that's how you got Kara.
Yeah. Actually, I wished I could say that, but it was not. Yeah, you remember that.
I do.
Yeah, God bless Chris Southward. Yeah, but anyway, it's and that's one of the things I teach all of my girls is that be charming, don't be inappropriate. Mm-hmm. But we can go in and charm the socks off people, and people. And in doing that, it also opens up relationships.
Yeah.
But if again, the part about being direct, the part about telling the truth, the part about not lying to people is that when you tell them something, they know Wayne's not fake.
Yeah.
Wayne's not giving you some line or stringing you along or making you think one thing. Mm-hmm. It's when he tells you something, you can depend on it.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of person I want to be. I want to be, responsible. I want to be dependable. I want to, when I'm given an assignment and I accept it, that I do everything I possibly can to make it happen. As a result of that, I'm the guy that fixes people's problems. When if something pops up that's difficult and uncomfortable, I get a call from the governor's office and said, "Hey, we got a difficult, uncomfortable problem that we need you to handle."
Yeah.
I go, "Okay, what is it?" And then I go, "What?"
Yeah.
Okay, and then
you help them out. So, yeah. Well, awesome. And I think that kind of consistency over time, because again, as you pointed out, even in your work history, you're not just in and out of places. You're long term into what you do. And I know that's true of your relationships as well. Mm-hmm. If we went back to the Kara story in the beginning, it's a story again of just persistence and time.
Persistence, yeah.
When love wasn't being returned initially. Yeah. It
was a smile ministry.
Yeah. A long one. No, he eventually wins Kara's heart is what happened. God, gives him favor and all that. But the same thing has happened in your work. Over time, consistency, staying with it, being genuine, being sincere. And I hear you talk about the people that you have mentored and work with, and it's always with care and compassion and pouring into their lives. And I see all of that. And it's just, so again, I think that's how God's blessed you into these realms of where I'm going to build relationship with people. I'm going to be consistent. I'm going to be compassionate. I'm going to be genuine. I'm going to be honest, very straightforward. You're going to be who you are, but it's with this long game approach of just investing in people. And the result in those people is that's what
proudest of, I guess.
Yeah,
is I look at, you've met Betsy, that was my assistant for 13 years. She's an incredible lady. She works for a cybersecurity firm, and as I tell people, she's taking over a cybersecurity firm. And if you know Betsy, if there's a problem, she'll solve it. And she walks in and organizes stuff, and wherever she is, she just slowly takes over. People can't do something, people fail. She just, and before you know it, Betsy's running the division or whatever it is of whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah.
I look at Tabitha Vasquez, who is used to be one of my assistants. She is a great leader. Her dad was military, very strong family unit there she grew up in, but she is the senior policy director for Governor Abbott right now. And great story there. She is an incredible lady. Romina Black has her own business, cancer survivor, mother, smart, unbelievably smart. My business partner, Judson Stafford, and Bonnie Dromgool, who is, she was very, very shy. And anyway, she worked for me for about 5 years, and then she got married, and she was sitting at home, and she looked down and saw an ad for an influencer that she stalked, and she just called and said, I'll be your executive assistant.
Wow.
Now she's an executive assistant for some big fashion influencer.
Wow.
That's crazy.
And then, of course, Maddie, who you met, my phone's over there blowing up. I'm hoping it's her on her way to the hospital to have a baby.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
Again, this is the pattern that Jesus talked about. He said, don't seek to have servants. He said, the greatest among you will be the one who's the servant of all. So that's what I hear. You meet someone, what can I do to meet the need that they have and develop a relationship with them, be there, be consistent. And that's how you've mentored. That's how you've trained. Yeah. That's how you've gained relationships of influence. That's how you got to where you are. You just didn't walk into Austin demanding your way.
No, I didn't.
You can't.
Yeah.
You can, but you don't get anywhere.
Yeah, I was going to say, those that do that end up on a bus ride out pretty quick.
And you didn't go in there just like shotgun gospeling everyone or anything like that.
Yeah. So how long now? Have you been in Austin? How many years?
Close to 30. I'm pushing 30. So.
Wow. And I would imagine then you're even just now seeing some of the greater fruit of all of that.
Oh yeah. It's I was one of my business partners now in the lobby, Chris Britton. Him and I were walking. All these people were telling me, "Hey, Wayne, hey."
Yeah.
I have no idea who most of them are. but it's really neat to walk into an office and see somebody that's worked for me or somebody that's a chief of staff that used to work for me. And there's a bunch of those. And there are, and then I mentioned Tabitha. To see Tabitha where she is just, and Romina. Romina worked for me back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and she's got a flourishing business. It's a interior design remodel type business, and she's doing a phenomenal job. Very, very proud of her. And, and her husband too. He's the government affairs director for ERCOT.
Wow.
That's awesome.
So in culture today, people go to work, people live in communities where we all are experiencing where our convictions as Christians are not always that of the whole culture, and it's becoming a more volatile situation where there's an expectation for us to adopt and accept and celebrate everyone else's lifestyles and approaches, and to be more silent in our faith. What do you say to people who are wanting to share their faith in their work environment, in their family environment, in their community, but it's volatile? What do you say to them?
Well, one, obviously be careful if there's somebody that is, and they're out there. I mean, that they lead with their mouth. Just stay away from them.
Yeah.
If you find yourself in situations where you're with someone, or you're friends with someone, or your neighbors with someone, the first thing that doesn't have the same values as you, the first thing you do is just you got to make friends with them. Mm-hmm. You got to make friends with people. Mm-hmm. And look, it doesn't matter what your sin is. You've got needs, mm-hmm. and everybody's got problems. Everybody's got problems. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter who you are. Mm. You've got problems. You've got issues, and that doesn't make you. That doesn't your neighbor could be hooked on opioids.
Right.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
They have a need.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what that need is. The first place to start is developing a relationship. Yeah. You got to be careful because people will dump their problems on you and try to make you responsible for their problems. Mm-hmm. But when you do that, you're not doing them any good.
Right.
That's part of their problem. Other people have always kind of taken the consequences away from those people's actions. God gave us consequences. He's given me the consequences for what I've done to teach us and to help us get past those things.
Yeah.
And so you can't take on the responsibility for other people's problems.
Right.
You can help them in a relationship where they learn how to deal with those problems.
That's good. What about in a work environment, though? I mean, believers are being put into awkward situations or difficult situations, I guess we could say, where they're being asked to take part in sensitivity training and then to relate in certain ways on the job. Maybe for them, they feel like they're compromising their convictions. What do you say to them?
Yeah, that's one of the things that when you're working for someone else is you're on their terms.
Yeah.
And if they say, don't do this, you've got to respect what their company rules are.
Yeah.
Now, if they're trying to proactively make you participate in something that you don't want to participate in, then that's a different story.
Right.
And that's kind of where the line's drawn.
Yeah.
If it's Rainbow Month and the guy beside you has a rainbow on, great. Let him have his rainbow on. If the company has a sign that's got a rainbow, let them have the sign. Now, if they want you to wear a T-shirt with the rainbow, a rainbow friendly something on it, and it's like, no, that's not where my convictions are.
Right.
It's at that point that when you're being compelled to come in to do something that you don't want to. But my suggestion is the guy in the cubicle next to you with a rainbow shirt on. Why don't you make friends with him?
Yeah.
Why don't you sit down and establish a relationship with that person?
Yeah.
Because I guarantee you, whether they have a rainbow on their shirt or not, that person has needs.
Yeah.
And they have issues in their life.
Yeah.
And are you scared of them?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. It's about reaching out and sharing with others and helping.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, because of cultural changes, it may take longer today than it did back in 1980, or in the 70s. And Billy Graham could just roll into town and say, I'm going to do a conference or convention, and people pour out of their streets to go to it.
Yeah. That's right.
That day's gone, and it's a process. People want to know they can trust someone first. So that relational trust happens often slowly over time through difficulty and being available in that moment. So that's awesome. So I know you live a very busy life, active life. In the midst of all that, how do you recenter? How do you love your wife? How do you keep your sanity during all of this?
Well, Karen and I have been married 35 years, and we spend a lot of time together, and always have, and we communicate very directly.
Okay.
And we probably, in our lifetime, we hadn't had less than half a dozen fights.
Wow.
We just don't. I mean, because the reason why is because things don't fester, because we do communicate so directly. But we spend a whole lot of time together. Obviously, our faith is important to us. And, I get up, it's funny, I kind of do the same thing every morning, have for my entire, since I was a teenager. And that is I get up in the morning and the first thing I put on is Maranatha. I mean, it's the 70s and 80s Maranatha stuff.
Yeah.
And I was listening to it all the way up here this morning. And,
Wow.
Nice.
And that's how I start my day.
Wow.
And, nothing wrong with Hillsongs. The music. They got great music. It's just not,
sure.
I'll listen to it. But it's just kind of the basics, the simplicity of the gospel.
And that's the music that was yours back when you first come into faith, really,
Right.
I guess, in a more personal way.
Right.
So that still is special to you, obviously. You spend time with Kara, which again is just another example of here's living sincerely, here's living forthright, here's living consistently over time.
Yeah.
And then that's what God blesses in a marriage, that's what God blesses in relationships, and that's what God will bless even in sharing the gospel with others. So
That's good.
That's awesome.
It's great.
Well, Wayne, thanks for being here.
You
today.
bet. It's been fun and good seeing you.
Love catching up, and I'm grateful for our hearers, listeners, and watchers to be able to hear the story and see what God has done in your life. So it's our prayer that the truth of the gospel and how we share the gospel will help you in your process as we all seek to live out our faith today in a culture that is not so friendly to the gospel, but to that is what we are called. And to that, we have wisdom in how to do that so that we may know how to give an answer to those who ask us about our faith. So keep lifting them up, living them out. And thanks again, Wayne, for being here with us today.
You bet.